Two teenage friends named Abby Rivers and Gretchen Lang are talking to each other on a phone call. They talk about random things pleasantly while getting ready. Gretchen asks Abby about her dreams, to which she asks her to move toward the friendship quiz. She asks her from the quiz, what would she do if her friend is leaving the town and she still has her dress on loan? Would she tell her friend or keep silent? Abby tells her that she would prefer silence, and they both laugh. They reassure each other that they would never leave each other. Abby tells her that she will pick her up in 10 minutes. Wearing makeup, she goes out and finds her father sleeping with the TV on. She turns it off, picks up the keys, and leaves. Gretchen puts on lip gloss and comes downstairs. Her father is reading the newspaper. She picks up the keys and tries to get out the door silently. When she hears her mother clearing her throat to call her, she turns back. Her mother clears her lipstick, makes her wear her cross locket, hands her an apple, and lets her go. She finds Abby in her car outside. She goes to her, and they exchange apples and lipstick. Reaching their school, they find their friends Margaret and Glee coming toward them. They are walking in the corridor, talking and laughing. Gretchen is reading the quiz, which asks what should you do if your best friend is spending all her time with a guy you don't like, whether you tell her or sabotage the relationship. In the meanwhile, a guy comes in and kisses Margaret. They look at each other and express their preference to sabotage the relationship. Gretchen says that the quiz must be for friends and not concerning guys, to which Glee says that it is because women are judged on their coexistence with men. Gretchen tells them that they would prove this notion wrong. Margaret asks them to plan something for the weekend. Abby asks her dad to spend the weekend at Margaret's farmhouse. He asks about the expenses, to which she replies that it would cost only gas. Her mother appears and asks about Gretchen being there, because Abby doesn't think of herself in Gretchen's presence. She ignores all this and leaves to meet Gretchen. At Gretchen's house, they are watching TV and reading magazines while talking, when her parents come to her room and tell them that they will be late that night. Her mother asks Abby to wash her feet before putting them on the furniture. Gretchen doesn't like their behavior. They all go to Margaret's farmhouse, as they are enjoying themselves by the small stream there. Margaret tells them about the mysterious haunted house at the other edge of the stream in the woods. She tells them that Molly Ravenel was sacrificed in a satanic ritual in that haunted house. She also tells them that it has become a historical asset, and they cannot tear it down. Abby asks them to go inside, and they all leave, dancing and singing. At night, they are eating pizza while Gretchen asks Margaret for cable, as she is getting bored. Margaret says that only boring people get bored. She takes out a Ouija board and asks them to place their hands on the stone. They randomly ask questions, like, is there anyone present there? And who is there? Suddenly, they hear a thudding sound and get horrified. They ask Margaret to go and check, but she refuses to do so. Abby goes there and opens the door, where she finds someone with a mask on his face. She gets terrified, and they move back shrieking. The masked man removes his mask, and Wallace comes out. He starts to laugh at them getting scared. They do not want him there. On the Ouija board, they trace 3 letters as Min and the 4th letter is E, but they do not notice it because of Wallace. They all go out. Gretchen asks Abby not to ditch her in her hour of need. They are taking a bath in the stream, except for Abby, who is sitting aside. Margaret asks her to join them, as nobody cares about her zits. She gets offended and goes away. Gretchen calls her from behind and tells her that Margaret becomes harsh sometimes, but she is so beautiful she does not need to worry about anything. While walking in the woods, they get near that abandoned building. Gretchen asks her to go in to explore what is inside. Abby does not find it safe and asks her not to go in, but she insists by saying that they should do it for another adventure. They both go in and find it huge on the inside. They walk through the darkness of the building, and Gretchen advances her hand into a dark room. They hear a sound there and go into a room at the end of the corridor. Abby lights up her lighter, and they see a scarecrow kind of object in a corner of the house. Suddenly, they find it speaking. They rush out in fear. Abby is running fast and hears Gretchen telling her that she is just behind her. On the other hand, Gretchen falls on the floor and gets up, collecting all her efforts. She cannot find the right way. She hears Abby guiding her the right way, but she falls once again and is dragged from behind into the darkness. Abby runs into the woods, but as she turns back, she does not find Gretchen behind. She calls her name aloud, but does not get any response. Meanwhile, Margaret and Glee come over. They are searching for them. Abby tells them about the incident and asks them to go inside the house and find Gretchen. Margaret is scared of going in, but Glee forces her to go. They enter the house, call Gretchen, and find her sitting there terrified. Abby rushes to her and asks her where she has been. Gretchen asks her the same question and asks them to take her home. She looks to be in shock. The next day, the Lemon Brothers come to their school for the show. They all sit and watch their tricks and power show. Gretchen looks a bit upset. At the end of the show, they present a big cross. Gretchen begins to tremble while staring at the cross. One of the showmen notices her strange reaction, but goes back to their performance. After the show, they come out and sit at a table to eat something. Margaret asks Gretchen to eat something, but she throws her sandwich to the birds, saying that she is not feeling hungry. Wallace comes over and begins to tease Glee. He kisses Margaret. Gretchen gets upset at this and stops them from doing so, as it gives her nausea. She tells Margaret that he talks badly about her, and they get involved in an argument. Abby looks disturbed at her strange behavior. Suddenly, Gretchen gets up from the bench and starts to vomit on Wallace. Abby talks about Gretchen's strange behavior with her mom, without mentioning her name. Her mother asks her to stay out of such things, as she is on scholarship in the school. At night, the sheet from Gretchen's bed slips down on the floor by itself. She wakes up and sees it on the floor. Suddenly, she notices it popping up from the middle, as if there is something underneath. She picks it up, gathers all her efforts, but does not find anything under it. The next day, while in the classroom, she begins to shout at Wallace, who is sitting behind her. She asks him to stop bothering her. Abby asks her what is the matter. Wallace claims to be innocent. Sister Kathleen asks her to stop behaving like that. She gets up from her seat and sits in the bin to pee in front of everyone, and leaves everyone in shock. Sister Kathleen tells her that she would like to call her parents. Abby drives to Gretchen's house to meet her, and finds her father, who is watering the trees outside. She asks him about how she is doing. Her father asks her to let them spend some family time. She moves on, when Gretchen appears there and asks her to stop the car. She gets into the car and they drive away, ignoring her father's voice behind them. Gretchen makes her promise not to tell anyone about the matter. She tells Abby that she can feel someone's presence all the time, and that he comes every night. Abby asks about his name, to which she says that she cannot take his name. She further tells her that it has been happening since the night they had been at the strange house. He comes daily and sits on her chest, and she cannot move. She tells her that she cannot change her clothes even, as she does not want to let him see her skin. Abby comforts her by saying that she will be all right, and that she would help her. Gretchen begins to scratch her arm. Abby scrolls the magazines and searches about Gretchen's trauma. She finds out about the possibility of an assault. She goes to meet her parents, and tells them everything about that night. And she tells them that Gretchen is stressed out because she was probably attacked when they were apart that night. They can't believe it. The next morning, she goes to meet Sister Kathleen and tells her everything about the matter. In response, she tells her that Gretchen's parents have already informed them that Abby is spreading false accusations about their daughter, and that she will end her scholarship if she finds her doing anything like this again. She gets disheartened, as nobody is ready to help Gretchen. She calls Glee and tells her apprehension that it might be Wallace who has done wrong with Gretchen, as he had not been there when they were looking for her. Margaret overhears all this, and tells her that she is only getting jealous of her, as Wallace is her boyfriend. She moves away, and Wallace kicks her in her stomach, warning her not to spread lies about him. She lies down, holding her stomach, when Gretchen comes over and says that she has betrayed her. Abby tells her that she is just trying to help her. At night, Abby goes to Gretchen's house and hits her window with little stones to attract her attention. She peers from behind the curtains and turns her lights off. Abby returns in despair. The next day, Gretchen comes to the ground, where Brother Morgan is announcing a contest, in which one person has to hit a point with a ball and the other will fall in the water if the ball goes right. Gretchen gives her name to hit the aim, and that Abby would have to be there in the water. Abby wants to stop her, but she insists by telling her that she should trust her. Gretchen aims the ball and it hits the point, resulting in getting Abby into the water. Her makeup is washed away and everyone laughs at her. Brother Morgan comes to help her, but she rushes to the dressing room. Gretchen comes behind her and apologizes for her mistake. She tells her that she did not do it intentionally, but Abby asks her to leave her forever. Gretchen locks herself in the toilet and begins to prick her hand with a pin as Abby is getting away from her. Abby comes home and tears her photo with Gretchen from the wall. She begins to weep, falling on the bed. At night, Gretchen hears the alarm ringing at a high volume. Her father goes to fix it, whereas she gets a fit. Her body seems to be stretched and her mouth pours out foam. It looks as if someone has pressed her down. Her arms are badly scratched. Finally, her father succeeds in turning the alarm off. He comes to her room and finds her sitting on her writing table with her back toward the door. He asks her to sleep. As he goes, Gretchen's eyes turn black. The next day, she looks more lively and attractive than usual. She comes into the lab where her brother is experimenting on a little pig fetus. He teaches them to dissect it. Abby tells her she looks better. Gretchen does not care. She stabs a pig and screams that her pig is alive. Everyone laughs at this. She goes to the beach where Wallace, Margaret, and Glee are sitting. She asks Wallace to pick her up from her home in a seductive tone. He gives his consent. She falls in his lap. Margaret does not like all this. She sees Gretchen pouring something out from a bottle. On her inquiry, she tells her it is a diet shake from France. Margaret asks her if she can have that diet shake. Gretchen agrees to it and gives her the whole bottle. Glee tells them that someone has placed a note in her bag that gives her a notion of secret love. Abby goes to the cursed place in the woods once again and takes snaps of everything that looks weird to her. Abby is observing Gretchen secretly. She chases her everywhere. She observes Margaret getting weak. Gretchen puts it in Glee's head that the note in her bag was placed by Margaret. She goes to Margaret and asks her not to keep dieting, and that she looks attractive in all her shapes. Margaret laughs to the core and tells her that she is not the one who has done all this. Glee leaves, crying bitterly. Gretchen holds her in the toilet and gives her half of a brownie to calm her down. She begins to eat. Suddenly, her face changes color, and she asks her about nuts in the brownie. Gretchen smiles, but shows her ignorance about the matter. Glee falls on the floor and asks her for help in God's name, but she is only watching her choke. Abby takes out the file that Gretchen has placed in the locker. She takes it into her car and finds some strange things in it. She finds the same things drawn in it that she has seen in that strange house. In the next sketch, she finds a girl's body, and Glee's name is written on it. She rushes in to help her, but finds her lying unconscious on the floor. People gather around her to take her to the hospital. She goes to meet Margaret, who is lying on her bed. She tells her that Glee is going to be fine. Margaret considers herself responsible for it. Abby tells her that it is Gretchen who wrote the note for Glee. She asks her to eat something and opens the curtains. Margaret becomes restless at this. She refuses to eat, saying that the smell makes her vomit. Abby asks her to try a single bite. As she takes it near her, she holds her stomach and begins to moan in pain. Abby sees a big worm coming out of her mouth. Her dog comes and takes it out by grabbing it with its mouth. Abby goes to meet Glee and tells her everything about what has happened to them. She tells her that Margaret has consumed more than the required amount of the shake that contains worm eggs, and that they are still coming out of her stomach. Abby meets Christian Lemon, one of the Lemon brothers who came to perform at her school. She asks him about what he had noticed in her friend at the school. He asks her to bring him yogurt first. After he has finished eating, he tells her that Gretchen is possessed by the devil, and her attempts to harm her friends are done by the devil, who wants to isolate her to have full possession over her. She can help her before it turns towards her to harm her. He tells her that Gretchen needs an exorcism. He assures her that he will help her, as he is the one who knew when the same thing happened to his mother. At this, she asks him to help her to get her friend out of all this. She promises 10 more yogurts to him. He agrees, but he asks her to do it privately, and not in some public place. He tells her that it might take a night or several days. He gives her some powder to mix in her drink. She goes to her house when her parents aren't home. She gets into the house and goes to the refrigerator to take her favorite drink out. She hears someone approaching and hides. Gretchen fills her glass with a drink and notices some sounds. She goes to find out, but Abby moves away and mixes the powder in her drink. As she comes back, Abby gets to the door, but it gets stuck in place and does not open. Gretchen holds a knife and goes to Abby. She tells Abby that she wouldn't leave her alone, as she is so obsessed with her. She kicks her in her stomach, which makes her fall to the floor. Gretchen blames her for doing all that harm to her. She turns back and takes a couple of sips from the drink, and comes closer to her, but passes out. Christian comes in and lifts her on his shoulders and puts her in the car. They take her to an abandoned house. Christian ties up her hands and feet on the bed, and advises Abby not to get involved in any kind of conversation with the devil. He goes out and brings holy water, and begins to sprinkle it on her. Gretchen begins to shout about getting back to consciousness. She asks them to free her, as she considers it a joke that they have been playing on her. She tells Abby that she is not possessed. Christian holds the holy book and chants something out of it, while sprinkling the water on her. She asks Abby to remove water from her face, as it is hurting her. As she gets near her, Christian comes from behind and stops her. He reminds her that she is not supposed to get involved in it. When they consider it may not be working, suddenly the lights begin to blink and the objects start to shake. The devil appears in her, telling them its name. Christian tells Abby about the devil and how dangerous it is. He becomes so happy about getting his first success as an exorcist. Gretchen's body is stretched upwards while being tied to the bed. Now he makes Gretchen drink the holy water, and she gets normal again. She seeks help from Abby, who advances to untie her, but suddenly, Gretchen asks her to let Christian do whatever he wants to get her free from the devil's possession. He asks Abby to prepare water to get Gretchen baptized. Abby tells him that she cannot get her friend to drown. She spreads a fleece on her. Christian comes over and they find a hand coming out of the fleece. Someone calls him, and when he advances further, he finds it to be his mother's hand. His mother appears there and tells him that she is so proud of him, and that she had lied to him when she told him that she was fine. Her car caught fire when she was alive. She asks him to help her. Christian gets overwhelmed by his emotions, but controls himself, saying that he would not fall into that trap. He goes out. He takes his stuff and leaves Abby behind with the holy book and Gretchen. Abby goes to the room holding the holy book, but does not see Gretchen there. She comes out and searches for her. She hears her demonic laughter and turns towards her. Gretchen attacks her, saying that she is such a selfish friend that she ran to save herself, leaving her friend behind to suffer. She kicks her off to the wall. Abby drops the holy book. After a while, she gets up and reads from the holy book aloud, but nothing affects her. Gretchen takes hold of her neck when she picks up a stone and attacks her head to free herself. Gretchen falls off, and Abby grabs a stick from the floor. She tells the demon to leave her body, as she will not leave her friend alone. The devil says that she is not her friend, and that she keeps her alone because she feels sorry for her greasy face. Gretchen attacks her once again, but she defends herself by putting the stick in between them. Gretchen's stomach gets hurt, and she runs off. Abby follows her, and finds her lying on the floor in a dark room. She gets there and starts to chant, but this time, not from the holy book, but from their common experiences from their good days as best friends. Gretchen asks her to leave her, and go away to save herself, but Abby does not want to leave her. Suddenly, she finds something popping out of her stomach under her shirt. They get scared of seeing it. Gretchen gets up and pukes loads of strange slimy liquid. Abby goes to her, and they see a mysterious being standing in the slime. The devil appears just in front of them. Gretchen gets afraid of seeing it. He advances towards Abby and knocks her off to the wall, saying that Gretchen is only mine. Gretchen attacks him with a broken glass bottle from behind. He turns back in pain. He attacks back at Gretchen. Abby sees a bottle full of alcohol. She picks it up and challenges the demon to come for her. She fills her mouth with it and draws out her lighter. As he gets closer to her, she throws alcohol on the fire, which burns him. They embrace each other. Abby comes to Gretchen's place in her car. Gretchen's mother calls her from behind that they have to leave in 10 minutes. Their luggage is being loaded on the truck. She gets into her car and they embrace each other. Abby tells her that she will not forget her, to which Gretchen says that she would not let her do that. She tells Gretchen that they beat the devil, and she has seen him gone with her very eyes, but Gretchen says that there is no surety of him being gone forever. They promise to each other to keep their friendship forever, and Gretchen leaves. Abby goes her way too. Wallace becomes the groundskeeper at his school after so many years of being dropped out of school. Glee becomes the lobbyist for the Allergy Foundation, spurring changes in food labeling and starting the movement to replace peanuts with pretzels on planes. Margaret becomes a teen counselor, promoting positive body image and healthy weight loss. She also authors a horror book series about killer worms. Christian Lemon is thrown out of his squad by his brothers, but he still manages to do anything to get his yogurt. Pony Lang becomes the region's top realtor and has his line of inspirational tapes to inspire others. Abby and Gretchen are still best friends, and though they are 2 states apart from each other, they manage to get on the lake once a year.